This is AIM Agenda. Thanks for your company. With me now, the Shadow Assistant Treasurer Andrew Leigh and Parliamentary Secretary for Foreign Affairs Steve Ciobo. Steve Ciobo, first to you. You heard a bit of what Tim Flannery had to say, this debate about clean energy. So you've copped a fair bit of flack, the government, for excluding wind farms and now the most popular form of alternative energy, solar, rooftop solar. Now, is the government trying to get rid of the Clean Energy Finance Corporation by stealth?
Well, no, not by stealth. We've said all along, Kieran, that we are opposed to the Clean Energy Finance Corporation. But let's be clear about what's taking place here, because there seems to be, and I do intend the pun, a lot of hot air around this for no particular reason. What the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is focused on doing, what its mandate is to invest in new emerging technologies. Solar and wind are not new emerging technologies. These are commercial level investments. We see massive increases predicted for both solar and wind over the next 5 years. And for anybody to suggest for one moment that because of the mandate that we've given the Clean Energy, or the directive I should say, to the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, that is somehow going to jeopardise wind or jeopardise solar is absolute rubbish. I mean, frankly, from an alarmist like Tim Flannery, I'm not surprised to hear it. But the fact is that there is absolutely no basis in fact at all, nor is there, more importantly, a financial basis for making that statement, because it's completely false.
So you believe that these industries, now these sectors, can stand on their own 2 feet, basically, Steve Ciobo?
Kieran, we've got something like 1.4 million solar panels rolled out across Australia on rooftops. We've got, of course, more importantly, the renewable energy target. And it's actually the renewable energy target, the RET, that will drive continued investment both in terms of wind and in solar. So I think, frankly, some people need to calm down. Tim Flannery should calm down. Some of the journalists should calm down, because there is absolutely no way at all that the directive that's been given to CEFC is going to have a detrimental, or in fact a negative impact, in terms of both wind and solar over the next 5 years. So, you know, people just need to be focused on what the reality is.
All right, let's hear, Andrew Leigh, your response to that. And I guess the argument that the government's making through Greg Hunt and Steve Ciobo this morning is that it's better to be investing taxpayer money in emerging technologies and in the large-scale solar projects which the government is still committed to.
Well, Kieran, let's be clear about what the CEFC's mandate is. It's not, as Steve has suggested, just to invest in new technologies. It's very clear if you look at its Act. If you look at the CEFC mandate published on its website, it has a mandate to deal with the market failure, that there isn't sufficient investment for both proven technologies and for new technologies. So you've seen the CEFC make a return that's 3% over the bond rate by investing in things such as wind farms in Victoria, solar in Alice Springs, energy efficiency in other contexts. The problem is this government has never seen an expert panel. It doesn't want a novel. Just ask the Curriculum Authority, just ask the Australia Council if you want evidence of that. They're trying to narrow down what the CEFC can invest in, and at the same time they want it to produce a higher return.
So what is the return you're talking about? You said 3% above the bond rate.
Yes.
And how does that compare to say, other investors in this space, as far as you're aware?
Well, it's doing two things. It's producing an important return for the government, Kieran, but it's also making sure that we get more investment in renewables. The renewable energy target makes a difference. We've seen the coalition try to smash that over recent months, and only as a result of Labor finally bringing them back to a sensible position have we got a renewable energy target going again. And we've seen a new wind farm in Western Australia off the back of that.
If the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is returning money to government coffers, making money for the government, as Andrew Leigh says, they're 3% above the bond rate, and it's investing in things of its own choosing, like solar and wind now, why would you mess with that?
Kieran, let me give you a tip, mate. Be very cautious about taking financial advice from an academic and a Labor Party member. With all due respect to Andrew Leigh, Andrew, mate, forgive me for not taking the Labor Party too seriously about your arguments about how this is actually financially prudent for us to stay invested in the CEFC. We made it clear before the last election that if elected, we would abolish the CEFC. It is billions and billions of dollars of money Australia does not have, money that's been borrowed to fund this thing, and most importantly, when it comes to solar, when it comes to wind, there already is a very vibrant, commercially sustainable business model out there. We see investment from large multinationals from all around the world into wind and solar.
And if you can't kill it, you'll nobble it. Is that right, Steve?
No, Andrew, the fact is there is already a multi-billion-dollar industry around wind and solar involving multinational corporations. Now, surprise, surprise, a Labor Party member comes on and goes, oh, hang on, they need government subsidised loans from taxpayers. Mate, this is the reason why your government put us into a mountain of debt, and these sorts of hard decisions are the reason why the coalition will get us out of this mountain of debt.
Okay, well, Andrew, let's hear your argument in response to this, because it's interesting. If Steve Ciobo's line of attack is that essentially these industries can stand on their own 2 feet, that they are viable business models already, and that I guess the return that the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is making shows that they're profitable. So why not focus on other areas? That's the point here. Why would you have this entity if not to explore breakthrough technologies?
Well, it's doing breakthrough technologies, but it's also doing innovative financing, Kieran. So in many cases, the Clean Energy Finance Corporation is partnering with the private sector, making investments possible at a larger scale than they would otherwise. But what's extraordinary about what Steve's saying is he's basically admitted that the government's agenda is to kill the CEFC, and if they can't do that,
it was an election promise,
they
Andrew.
want to they want to hack into what the CEFC can invest in, but yet they'll still want it to produce a commercial return. But frankly, if all the CEFC can do is collect the methane from farting cows, it's not going to produce a return 3% above the government bond rate.
No, well, I think we can all agree on that. Steve Ciobo, let's move on to...
That's a new meaning to emerging technologies.
Exactly.
What else do you want, mate? What else do you want?
Let's look at the coal mine in the New England. Should Barnaby Joyce quit now, given his very public criticism of government policy?
Oh, look, Barnaby's criticism is directed towards the former state Labor government in New South Wales. At the end of the day, it's the former state Labor government in New South Wales that took the decision around land use. Let's be clear about what Greg Hunt did, and let's be clear about the federal government's role. The federal government deals with stage 15, only stage 15 of a 17-stage approval process. It's the state government that makes determinations around land use. When it comes to water, Greg Hunt approved it on the basis of there being 1:1,000 parts being usable. So in other words, with respect to this mine, it is 0.1% of water use of the available water in the region. It's not on the black soil plains. There is one very small part of it on the black soil plains. Something like 6 independent...
Barnaby's still not happy though, is he?
Well, look, I mean, as I said, Barnaby's grief is with the former New South Wales state Labor government, who were the ones who actually pushed this through to begin with.
Barnaby Joyce has been pretty clear he wants to disassociate himself from a cabinet decision, and the cabinet handbook is categorical. The only circumstances in which you can do that is if you resign from cabinet. What he wants is Barnaby's law, a new rule that says that you can only disassociate yourself with cabinet decisions without resigning from cabinet if you're Barnaby Joyce. But he should do the decent thing, the honourable thing, which ministers have done in the past when they've disagreed with a cabinet decision. He should quit.
Okay, Steve Ciobo, let's finish now, if we can, on this report in the Financial Review about the double dissolution on unions, on the trade union issue. Is this a prospect? Apparently the government, according to Phil Coorey's report today in the AFR, going to expedite consideration of the Building and Construction Commission and to have that heard on the first day back in August.
Well, it's not about providing a trigger. What it's actually about is good policy. As a government, we're very focused upon the fact that clearly there is something rotten in the state of Denmark when it comes to the trade union movement. The Royal Commission is highlighting that there are all sorts of deals that are being done which aren't advantageous to the workers that the union movement apparently is there to represent. And so the government's very focused upon cleaning up the trade union movement. We see allegations of links to organised criminal activity, bikie links in WA, for example. So I think the government's focus on this is rightly about cleaning up union activity. And you know, there will always be examples, and it's littered through time, examples of there being double dissolution triggers. We've still got a long way to go. We've got a lot of work to do, a lot of repair work to do in terms of the nation's finances, and that's what we're focused on.
Would Labor be up for fighting on this issue, given it's been such an enormous headache for Bill Shorten recently, and you know, having to front the Commission, 900 questions over 2 days, it was hardly a great look. You really wouldn't want to seek election on the basis of defending the union movement, would you?
Kieran, if we're fighting an election with the man who brought Australia work choices, we'll be very happy to do that. Bill Shorten said he'll debate Tony Abbott on industrial relations any place, any time. And I think I and my Labor colleagues would comfortably say the same with any of our opponents. Labor's record for standing up for good jobs and making sure that workplaces are productive and not confrontational is an extraordinarily strong one. We see unions as having a role to play in solving disputes. You see that move to enterprise bargaining in Australia, initiated by Labor in the early 1990s, associated with a big fall in industrial confrontation in Australia, getting us away from that old-fashioned 1970s conflict model towards a model in which people work things out in workplaces.
But is Bill Shorten damaged goods in the wake of the Commission hearing and the claims? The claims made, the questions put to him?
Not at all. I thought Bill handled himself with aplomb. Obviously, this was exactly what the government's Royal Commission was aimed to do, a Royal Commission which has cost more than 4 times as much as the government has spent on family violence. It was designed to achieve a political end, not to focus on improving workplace productivity, not to focus on trying to look at where the jobs of the future come from, how we can turn around the slide in real wages that we've seen over recent years.
Steve Chabot, finally to you. I know you say it's not about providing a trigger, but would you, how would you see an early election fought on this issue? Do you think it would be enough to warrant going to the polls early?
Mate, I'm not going to, Kieran, involve in crystal ball gazing. The government's got a job to do. Look, we just had, prior to rising for the winter recess, one of the most productive and successful sitting fortnights we've had since we came into government. We achieved something like $50 billion worth of savings to the nation's budget. That's a big impact in terms of our nation's debt and recovery position. So we're very focused on the task that we were elected to do. That's what I'm focused on, that's what the government's focused on. So I'm not going to worry about discussions about what if. We've got a job to do.
All right. We're out of time. Steve Chabot, Andrew Leigh. Gents, have a good day.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Kieran.
A quick break, back in just a moment.